Greetings, friends. This is Chris Batts, your host of the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. Kicking off season 2 again, and in today's episode, I spoke with a general counsel who has an inspiring risk-taking story where she shares insights about being fearless and confident when life comes at you with career choices and opportunities. You won't want to miss this. Just a reminder, the PDF transcript of this audio is available to download. Go to liongroup.recruiting.com/podcast. As many of you know, we interview corporate defense law firm leaders, partners, general counsel, and legal consultants. You are listening to episode 32 of the Law Firm Leadership Podcast.
Broadcasting from Kansas City, this is the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. In each episode, you'll receive actionable ideas and hear personal leadership stories of both men and women serving as leaders and executives in the legal industry. Enjoy a front row seat as Chris Batts speaks with general counsel, legal consultants, and law firm leaders and law partners at the top corporate defense law firms from around the United States.
Welcome to the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Batts with the Lion Group. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jill Marchant, Chief Legal Officer of Hallmark Cards. Jill started her career at Morrison Foerster in California, but then moved to Kansas City and made the leap in-house, first with Honeywell, then Applebee's, and now DineEquity, which is the parent of Applebee's. Her career then transitioned to Louisville, Kentucky, where she became general counsel for both Texas Roadhouse and Farm Credit Mid-America. Now, within the past 2 years, Jill was brought back to Kansas City to be Chief Legal Officer to one of Kansas City's largest private employers, Hallmark Cards. Jill received both her bachelor's and her law degree from Brigham Young University. Welcome, Jill, to the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. It's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here, Chris. I've had a wonderful career in the law so far, and if talking about it is of interest or benefit to your listeners, then all the better.
Well, again, I so appreciate your airtime and your willingness to meet and talk. Jill, let's just kind of start with why back in Kansas City? Why Hallmark?
Well, we probably don't have enough time to talk about why Hallmark because I have been a brand fan for probably many, many years, certainly since the time I could first hold a crayon. So I have a lot of affection, love, and loyalty for Hallmark as a company and as an iconic brand. But when I received a call about an opportunity to come back to Kansas City and to be at Hallmark, it was kind of the dream job, if you will. So to work for a company that gives the world so much of what it needs right now and has such an interesting portfolio of businesses and legal work, and to do that in a place that my children and family would call home, where I have one child living and my husband's family living, it just seemed like really a dream come true. So it was a very easy call to accept when I got it.
Jill, would you take a moment and explain to my listeners what Hallmark is as a corporation? We all know Hallmark generally as a greeting card company, but I'm learning even myself that it's much more than that.
Sure. We have a portfolio of businesses, some that are probably more familiar to people and some that I think sometimes people forget. So we have our greetings business, and that's the business where we do sell our greeting cards and our gift wrap and related products. And we do that in more than 30 languages in nearly 100 countries and 100,000 rooftops worldwide. So that the span of our greetings business is pretty large. We also have those familiar gold crown stores that people are used to seeing at the mall or in a shopping center or around the corner from where they live. And we have about 2,000 Hallmark gold crown stores in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And those have our greeting cards, gifts, gift packaging, and presentation. It's the kind of perfect place to go if you know you need to do something for someone special, but you're not quite sure what you need. We have terrific sales team members in those stores that can help you. And I've spent many time in Hallmark Gold Crown stores, and I'm probably a platinum member if you added up all of my points. The company also owns Crayola, another iconic brand that works to provide art materials and creative play toys in markets all over the world. Creativity is cool is what we say at Crayola. The company also owns Crown Media Family Networks, the Hallmark Channel, if you will, and 2 other cable channels, as well as a streaming service that offers what we call at our house a little bit of happy. So if you're in the mood to watch something that's uplifting, wholesome, that you can sit down with your kids and your grandparents and watch and just feel good, we offer that in our media business. And then finally, Kansas Cityans will be familiar with Crown Center, which is our real estate development. We manage an 85-acre hotel, office, entertainment, and residential complex. Our headquarters is here. We lease office space, and we have the fabulous offerings at the Crown Center shops. So it's really a diverse portfolio of businesses, which is in part what makes the legal work so exciting and interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing the vastness that Hallmark touches both locally in Kansas City, being such an iconic company. And then I just didn't realize how global you guys reach, all the different languages. That's amazing. Jill, what's on your plate? I mean, so you've taken the helm. The prior GC, Brian Gardner, is that correct?
Yep.
Transitioned and retired, and you stepped in. I guess the question I would have for you is, what's on your plate as you take the reign of a 30-plus legal team? What are you doing?
Well, I think it's any new general counsel's first job to be here for a while and just observe and listen. So my first assignment was really to get the lay of the land, if you will, to learn the culture, learn the people, understand our business, and then think about how to improve upon what we have and really build or reshape the legal team that we'll need for the next 109 years. So I see a GC's job as first, observation and listening, relationship building, acquiring business knowledge and cultural knowledge. And then it's really figuring out what skill sets and knowledge base do we need to drive the short-term and long-term strategies of the business, and what legal support should we be purchasing on the outside that's niche-y or doesn't occur often enough to justify it being in-house. And then I think it's to really understand where is the business going and what will we need to support that business to be a truly enabling function. We should be viewed as partners to the business and a function that helps drive the business forward. And we should be declarative about that. So it's figuring out what the legal team might need to help us do that.
And I know you had mentioned when we had sat down at one point, you had mentioned you're really looking at what is the corporate legal department of the future. Is that an accurate statement?
I think it is, yeah.
Would you feel comfortable sharing a little bit on how you're approaching? Because obviously, stepping into something that's been there for a while, it's probably fair to say there's some reorganization that you're exploring and implementing so delicately with just people and their roles. But what are some of the things that you're looking to as you're exploring kind of the legal department of the future?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that I do is when I'm new to an environment, because I've made several career moves over my time in the law, is I kind of keep a list off to the side of the things I'm observing that I think might need attention or change or evolution, which is really a better word because it's not so much about dramatic change. It's really about refinement and evolution. And I'll keep that list during that observation and listening period and then come back to it. And it's important because sometimes you come in and you see things and you think those need adjustment or change or evolution. But after 6 or 9 months in, you might look at your list and realize, I get why we do that, or I get why we need that. I wouldn't have understood that in my first 20 days, but maybe 180 days in, I have a better understanding of why that is so. So that's why I think that learning and listening and observation period becomes really, really important. But when you look back at the list, things will still be there that you think might need attention. So things like good process in the legal division, good technology, mobile enablement, making it easy for our people to work wherever and whenever they are. Things like developing people and helping them build not only the skill sets they need, but the networks and relationships that they need to help move the company forward. So I have been putting a lot of focus on individual and team development and career pathing and external and internal development opportunities, as well as process improvement, technology enhancement, and those kinds of things to modernize a little bit, but also to have our structure aligned to the business so our business partners know who their resources are and where to go. And those are some of the things that we're still working on.
And I know you had mentioned originally, so the law department, and this is, as you said, using the word evolution, a lot of parts tend to be kind of like a captive law firm within a corporation, but you're moving towards a model that's more integrated into the business. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I think it's important to align to the business and to be declarative about how you're structured so that business partners can see where they fit into your work and that you are there to enable what they're trying to accomplish. We're a service organization and we are a business partner and we should be advocates for the business. And so I think to do that best, we have to be organized in such a way that the business can see how we align to what they're doing.
Yep. So there was a kind of a big change when you had come to Hallmark. There was a new CEO. Tell my listeners a little bit about that. Let's call it new boss and how that's affected the company for the better.
Sure. Well, we're really fortunate to have Mike Perry step into the role of president and CEO at Hallmark. What I love most about Mike is that he is a longtime Hallmarker, which is the word we use to describe ourselves when you're an employee at Hallmark. So Mike has 30 years with the company, and he has spent time managing and leading really significant portions of our business. But what's really special about Mike is even though he's a long-tenured Hallmarker, he has this uncanny ability to see things in new and different ways. And so while you might expect someone who's got that tenure to be rooted in the old way of doing things or the current way of doing things, Mike is constantly looking ahead to how we can do things in new and different ways to be there for our consumer wherever she finds herself. And so that's what I think is really unique and special about Mike. So he knows the brand, he knows the business, he knows the people and the culture, but he also has a vision for the future and how we have to evolve as a business to stay competitive, but also to make sure we're in all the places that we need to be to deliver our goods and services.
Jill, I wanted to ask the question, what does leadership mean to you?
Oh, wow. That's such a big question. I think for me, when I hear the term leadership, I think about an experience that I had with a really special mentor in my career who, before I left to take my first General Counsel position, took me to lunch. And we had a lovely lunch, and she listened as I talked about my fears and insecurities about stepping into the General Counsel role. And then she gave me a book. And she gave me a book called The Servant Leader by James Autry. And she said, I think you will like this book. And this book might help you find your leadership style. And I was so grateful that she did that because I read the book and I really loved the things that it had to say about what a leader really is. And Autry uses several words to describe servant leadership. But what they boil down to me is that when you become a leader, it's no longer about you. When you're an individual contributor, you're constantly working to prove your worth and achieve your results and make a splash and achieve. But when you take on the leader role, it's no longer about you. And it's really about basking in the glow of the success of the people you lead and being there to enable their success, to develop them, to champion them, to give the credit away, and to be there for them, to break down barriers, to make sure they're properly resourced, to do all those things that help them be successful. And that's a huge transition. And I think the principles that Becky shared with me in that conversation and then by giving me that book, and I still have the book with her handwritten inscription sitting on my shelf at work because I'll pick it up every now and again and read it because I think those concepts are so important. So servant leadership to me is really the ideal form of leadership.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. I'll make sure the listeners have a link to click on to that book you mentioned. Jill, let's talk about your career path and how you landed your roles with companies. Now, you had mentioned you originally started at Morrison & Foerster in LA. Can you share with my audience that transition from private practice to in-house?
Sure. Well, I was really excited to start my career in the big city at the Los Angeles office of a big international firm that was and still is a very progressive and forward-thinking firm. And I was enjoying my time there. And I unexpectedly became a mother. And having children wasn't something that I thought was going to be in the plan for me. But Mother Nature knew better. And when I unexpectedly had my daughter, my priorities started to change. And I think the bright lights and the rat race of the big city were a little less appealing than they were initially. And I really wanted to be where I would have, more opportunities to have the time that I would need to both continue to develop my career and to spend time being a mom. So my husband and I packed up everything we owned and sold a car and put it all in a U-Haul and drove to the Midwest. And ironically, I think I had read an article in a magazine about best places to live in America. And at the time, Kansas City was on the list. And I think I even still have the article in a scrapbook box somewhere. And I was like, let's go to the Midwest where there's green grass and cows and good Midwestern values and affordable housing and good barbecue. And so I didn't have a job, but I knew that I had a good toolkit and I had good skills and I had a good foundation from a big law firm experience. And so I got to Kansas City and I canvassed the employment landscape in the legal profession here. And I was really fortunate that my resume landed on the pile of resumes that were being poured through at a division of Honeywell that's here in town. And that was my journey to in-house work. And I was really fortunate because that role with Honeywell was really unusual in that it was an in-house role, but we functioned very much like a small law firm. So I was actually able to cut my teeth on big litigation and handle cases myself, take depositions and write briefs and give oral argument. And so it was a really great way to develop as a litigator and an employment lawyer. But looking back on it, I think, wow, that was kind of a crazy thing to do. But I think my career as a whole is sort of a portrait in risk-taking. And I think I'm an example of how if you're willing and you have the support system and the partnership in your personal life to do it, that there can be great rewards at the end of those risks.
I love it, Jill. And just to clarify for my listeners, you resigned from your role at MoFo, correct, in LA, and you and your husband packed up and moved to Kansas City in the hope of finding something as you were learning to become a mother.
Yep. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that's a very good summation.
I mean, so just talking logistics, were you pregnant when you were applying for those roles, or is this post your first child?
Post my first child. I was actually pregnant when I was studying for and taking the California bar exam, which is why on passing it the first time, I will never relinquish my membership in the California bar, even if I never set foot in the state of California again, because that was one of my greatest professional accomplishments, given my physical condition at the time.
I would say so. That's impressive. Well, I love the story. And so you landed at Hallmark. Share with my listeners that journey from the various roles you've had. What led you to those roles? How did that happen?
Well, like I said, I left LA and left a really great firm. And the cool thing there was I had people sort of applauding me on my way out the door. I had partners who had mentored me who said, you've got everything you need in your toolkit, you'll be fine. And I had coworkers who were maybe a little bit envious that I was willing to do something so bold. But I had a lot of encouragement and support on my way out the door and across the country, and landed the job at Honeywell and stayed there for a long time, 12 years. But I was working for a very talented and special general counsel at the time, who was also a great mentor of mine. And he wasn't going anywhere. And if I wanted to rise in the organization, I would have to leave the city or I would have to leave Honeywell. And I didn't really want to move because when you're raising kids, that flexibility sometimes is compromised, or at least you feel like it is at different points in their rearing. And I really didn't want to leave Kansas City or the state. And so I knew that to move up and to move onward, I needed to pack up my toolkit again, my tool bag, and go elsewhere. And I was just fortunate enough that I think I had socialized my interest in doing something different or being willing to do something different enough in my local legal community and with my connections that when I received a phone call about doing something wildly different and going into the restaurant industry, I was really intrigued by that idea. So to go from a stable, long-tenured engineering workforce that supported the nuclear weapons complex to the high turnover, low tenure, fast pace of the restaurant industry was a really exciting switch because the business issues are different. The legal issues are different. The legal risks are different. And I just thought it was a great way to stretch myself and learn and do something new and different that would be invigorating and exciting and intellectually stimulating. And that really turned out to be just the case. And so that's how I found my way to Applebee's. When Applebee's and IHOP merged under the parent company DineEquity, as happens in many mergers or consolidations, those can be challenging times for people, but they can present opportunities. And it was, for me, an opportunity to enlarge my scope of responsibility and enlarge my circle of business relationships, to take on more leadership opportunities and a larger docket of employment matters and litigation matters, and along with some of the other things I did. And so that was an exciting time. It's a tumultuous time as well, but those times create great work for lawyers. So it was a time of great learning about a lot of things, not just the legal areas, but things about leadership and culture and how you integrate cultures when they come together and the challenges that can come with that. And while I was working at DineEquity, I had the good fortune to get a call about an opportunity to be the General Counsel for Texas Roadhouse. And that was an opportunity to really step up for the first time into that GC role, again, for a brand that I adored and continue to adore to this day. I'm still a big fan of Texas Roadhouse, and although my children are no longer willing to sit on the saddle for their birthdays, I hope someday that I'll have grandchildren that will want to go and sit on the saddle at Texas Roadhouse for a birthday dinner. And that was a great experience, and I had had a professional goal to be a general counsel of a public company before I turned 50, so that was the achievement of a professional goal. But ironically, sometimes what we think might be our dream job is not really that dreamy. And for me, it maybe wasn't the best fit for me. And so it was a great learning experience. But I was very open to other opportunities, but I wanted to stay in Louisville. My husband and I were very happy on our little gentleman's farm of 11 acres with our horses out front, and we wanted to stay in Louisville for a while. And at about the time that I was wrestling with whether Texas Roadhouse was the right place for me, I was approached by Farm Credit Mid-America. Again, totally different industry. So this is a large agricultural finance cooperative, a $22 billion portfolio in a network of entities that serve rural communities and agriculture. And so I thought, wow, what a great way to enhance my financial acumen, to learn more about how our food comes to be. And not going to lie, my husband and I were a little bit of farmer wannabes. So I thought this is a chance for a kid from the suburbs to really learn more about a life I had admired from afar for many years. And I still have a fondness for the people who work hard to make our food happen. In fact, I have a miniature John Deere tractor sitting up in my office today just to remind me how special those people are and how important they are. And that was just a great experience. And I don't think it's an experience I would have interrupted, but for the call, would I be interested in coming back to Kansas City and being in the legal role at Hallmark? And as we said in our kind of opening conversation, that was really the culmination for me to be with a brand and a business that I adore, and to be at home was just the perfect combination.
Reflecting on your nearly 30-year career so far, Jill, what are some takeaways that you could provide my audience in your journey?
Well, I don't like the 30-year part of that question because it's hard to believe. It's just gone so fast. But I think there are some key learnings from my career path. The first would be it's really important to define success for yourself. I think so often as young professionals and as young women and as young lawyers, we're looking externally for what does success look like? What should I be achieving? What should I be doing? And I think that's something you really have to define for yourself. Success can look all kinds of different ways for different people. And I think to not box ourselves into someone else's definition of success and to define it for ourselves. And I think once you've done that, it's important to take a pretty frequent inventory of what you're doing, and does it align with your goals and your values? If you say something is important to you, are you doing things that actually reflect that that's important to you, whatever your high-level goals and objectives are? I think being willing to take risks. My career is just peppered with risk-taking. There is a security and a definition of success that can come with being in a very stable environment and staying in one company for a long time. And that is definitely one definition of success. And we have lots of long tenured folks here at Hallmark, and their commitment and loyalty to the brand is extraordinary. And that's one path, but sometimes that path doesn't have as many twists and turns. And if you like the twisty turny path, which I must, then sometimes you have to be willing to take risks and move outside of the organization or stretch yourself in new and different ways. I'm a big fan of a concept that I didn't create, so I can't take credit for it. And I read about it for the first time when I read Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. And it's this idea that our career is not a ladder. When you're on a ladder, it's narrow, it's straight. There's always someone ahead of you, and sometimes not the most attractive posture. And to get off, you have to jump off or fall off, and to get ahead, the person ahead of you has to move. And so it's this idea that our careers are really jungle gyms, and it's more exciting that way, right? So there's more than one way to get to the top, and you've got to stretch sideways and over, and sometimes even under, maybe taking a step back or moving across. When I mentor young lawyers and young women, I talk a lot about this metaphor of the jungle gym, and to think of their career in that way and not be afraid to take assignments that might be different or might be lateral or might feel like a step back, because every opportunity is a learning experience that will prepare you for the next one. So those are a couple of concepts that I really focus on with people that I'm working with informally or formally to help them think about their own path and what they want. There are so many different ways to enjoy a stimulating career in the law, from a law firm to being in-house in a role that can last you 40 years, to moving around and doing different things, to stepping away and doing a non-legal role for a while. There are just so many different pathways, and it's that jungle gym concept that I like people to embrace, because the ladder can feel so confining and so frustrating and so discouraging at times.
Jill, I'd love for you to share also, if it's other advice, but specifically for women, would you speak to the women audience and the challenges that they face? And as they look to someone like you, what would you share to them who are on the professional journey?
Well, I think the elephant in the room when we're talking about women and women's career development is always this concept of motherhood. And how do you blend the desire to be successful professionally with the desire to be successful emotionally as a wife and as a mother? There are still some things that only women can do, unless they've changed that. We're the ones that are still having the kids. And so I think that's the thing that we're always kind of wondering about. And so I encourage women to talk to other women and to reach out to women that they think or they view as having achieved something that they want, and find out how they did it. And I tend to talk to young women about this notion of a support system, and that there are different roles in your support system. So it's nice to have people that you admire as role models, and those are people that you can listen to or read about or study or observe. They're not necessarily people you have to come in contact with. I just finished Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, and I thought it was just a beautiful story about someone who kind of followed a very traditional path, but then realized that other things were really important to her. And my gosh, it turned out pretty well for her, didn't it? But she took some risks, and she took what some people might say would be steps back. And so I think having those sort of idyllic role model people and studying their lives, but then bringing it closer to home, having mentors, people that you can meet with and have personal interaction with, who are your accountability partners, who help you solve problems and hold you accountable for achieving your goals and objectives. I think you also need a network. So I think you need people who are in your network of professional peers with whom you have a shared experience and who can relate to you, and you can share tools and resources and ideas and solutions on a professional level. And then I kind of talk about that last element in your support system is shoulders. You just need safe places to vent, to cry, to relate, someone who will pick up your kids when you're running late and someone whose kids you can pick up when they're running late. And that really tight inner circle that's a safe place to emote and to be raw. Because I don't suggest mixing those roles together. I don't think your mentor is someone to whom you want to vent and cry and emote. And I wouldn't call my mentor to help me with a kid situation or to talk about a challenge I'm having in my marriage. But I think building that really good support system, and I often challenge young women to literally write those categories down and put at least one or two names under each category, because it does take a village. And I had a wonderful village of both men and women who mentored me and cared about me enough to give me candid feedback and to help me course correct and to challenge me and to stretch me. And we all need that, I think, to develop professionally.
Jill, this is a point where I like to transition to more personal topics. So I understand you're married and you have 3 kids. Share a little bit about your love for land and horses. You brought it up briefly, and now that you're back in Kansas City.
My husband and I are both products of the suburbs and the public school system, but we always sort of yearned for wide open spaces. And so when we were living here in Kansas City the first time, our oldest daughter came home from, I think it was one day during the first week of her middle school, or it may have even been her high school experience, and told us she needed a BlackBerry. So this will date me a little bit, but and we probed, and I was trying to figure out if she knew what a BlackBerry was. And I don't think she knew what it was, but she knew she needed it. And so we thought, let's think about this. Let's maybe move to where there's less pressure to have all the things of the world, and maybe do something that will really bring our family together and get our kids outdoors, getting dirty, doing chores, some of the things that were reminiscent of our childhood when we used to play outside until the street light came on. So we moved to Miami County. We moved to Lewisburg, where our kids could see kids that were like them, kids that were going to stay and run the family business. Some kids would go to college, maybe others wouldn't. Some would stay and be on the family farm. And we bought horses, and it just really became a time of bonding and closeness for our family. We all loved horses, and that was just really a great experience. And so when our children discovered cars and the opposite sex, they lost their love for horses, but my husband and I did not. So we took horses with us when we moved to Louisville, and we bought some land and really enjoyed just a beautiful Kentucky setting where we were able to live with and enjoy our horses. But when we came back to Kansas City, it was an opportunity as empty nesters not to have to live where we were close to the right school district, and to not be confined by, our children's lives when it came to choosing a location to live. So I put a pin in Hallmark, and I drew a circle, and I said, this is how far I'm willing to commute. And I now enjoy a 4-minute commute each way every day, which I love. And we're part of 64108 is our zip code. We love being part of Kansas City. We're doing the urban thing for the first time, and we are loving it. Our city is thriving and growing, and we're just really excited to be part of it and to see how we can give back to it now that we have a little extra time to do that.
Right. So you were in Kansas City during the 90s up through past 2010. You've come back, you've moved urban side, 64108, which is where my office is as well, kind of in the heart of downtown Crossroads. And I get to see your headquarters outside of my window. What has changed, Jill, knowing who Kansas City was back then and who they are now as a city?
I think Kansas City has always had a great feel and a great, history and different things and traditions of great steak and great barbecue and great sports and great rodeo. And we just have the fundamental elements of a great city. But the city that we left is definitely not the city we came home to. It's been so exciting to see all of the things that are happening downtown, the development, the growth, the cultural expansion with things that are happening now at Union Station and Sprint Center and the Kauffman Center, which is just a jewel in this city. And now to think that we're getting a new airport. And to me, one of the key signals that this was a new and different and exciting place going through really a rebirth was my oldest daughter got married not quite a year ago, and we actually bought her wedding dress in a downtown bridal shop.
Yeah, wow.
And I don't know that would have happened when we were here before. So you see people coming back to the city, and it's really a terrific thing. And you see people wanting to give and engage and help nurture our city. We're at a really exciting time with a new mayor. We've got lots of neat things in flight. So we are just super pleased to be back, and hopefully we'll be able to make a contribution of our own in some small way.
Jill, I wanted to ask you this question too, and we haven't touched on entirely. You mentioned some mentors, but who are your heroes, or who have been the influencers in your life to get you to along the path of where you are today?
I may be rare in that the people that I would call my heroes and my mentors were also my bosses. And I think I've just been truly blessed in the boss department. So from Larry Peitzman at Morrison & Forrester to Dave Sosinski at Honeywell, Becky Tilden at Applebee's, Scott Colosi at Texas Roadhouse, Bill Johnson at Farm Credit Mid-America, I've just been really fortunate to have model leaders in bosses who took the time to develop me, to mentor me. And that's not always just getting a pat on the back and a positive performance review. That can be getting some tough feedback, getting coaching, listening, course correcting, challenging, stretching. I think a good boss and a good mentor, and the people who are my heroes, are the people who saw something in me and literally wanted me to get better and were willing to invest some time to help me do that. So I hope I haven't embarrassed any of those people by calling their names out loud in our conversation today. But I think I am really fortunate that some of the people who have been my heroes have been the people who also were my direct leaders and who were bold in their feedback and guidance and steering and direction, along with the support, encouragement, and recognition. It's the whole thing that you need from a leader. It's not just one or the other. And I've been really blessed to have leaders who I still today keep in touch with and now consider friends and are on my Christmas card list, my Hallmark Christmas card list.
Jill, last question for you. What is the kindest thing someone has ever done for you?
Wow. You know, I really do believe that a pivotal point in my career was when a boss and mentor, now a friend, gave me some tough but important feedback with his heart on his sleeve, and it was really with the interest of helping me be better. As a young lawyer, I wanted to prove myself and that I was smart and that I had all this to offer, and I wasn't really focused on building relationships and focusing on the big rocks and partnering and collaborating. And he sat me down and just talked me through it and gave me some tough feedback. And he's really led me to people say, you know, what's that one golden piece of advice you give everybody? And it's to be a consumer of feedback. All feedback doesn't feel good, but all feedback is good. And it's important to know how others perceive you because their perception is their reality. And I think it was a tough conversation even for him because he was a relatively new leader, and I think he said out loud that he sort of cut his leadership teeth on me. But that was a turning point in my career, and that candid feedback delivered with positive intent and a warm heart and real caring probably was the most pivotal point in my career that really guided me to change the way I was thinking about the work I was doing and thinking about the way I engaged with my business partners, and really changed the course for how I thought about my role for the rest of my career. So I would say professionally, at least, that was one of the toughest, but truly one of the kindest things I've experienced that probably influenced the fact that I could be sitting here today in the role I'm in today.
Jill, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you for your time today.
Thanks so much for having me. I've enjoyed the chance to reflect and pause, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone who listened to this episode of the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. If you have questions or would like to recommend someone to be on the podcast, please email them to podcast@findthelions.com. If you like this podcast, please leave a review on iTunes. Also, share our podcast via email or social media. To share our podcast, listen to more shows, or to read the transcription of this audio, go to liongrouprerecruiting.com/podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Leadership Podcast. This podcast is for education purposes only. This content cannot be used for commercial use without written permission from the Lion Group. If you like this podcast, leave a review on iTunes.